13 years after the original Avatar dropped, the sequel is finally upon us. From the trailer, you can tell that the makers put a lot of effort to make it look as awesome as possible. But a great movie goes beyond visuals, and now Twitter users have given their 2 cents on the film. Keep watching this video to find out what people on Twitter are saying about James Cameron's movie. What you need to know. Avatar: The Way of Water, the follow-up to James Cameron's 2009 epic, debuted on December 16th and promised audiences even more stunning special effects and another extended stay in theater lines. Naturally, early screenings of the upcoming blockbuster were enjoyed by the rich and famous in the entertainment industry, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive. We've compiled 7 of the best bite-sized reviews from Twitter for anyone who doesn't have the time or the desire to read long evaluations. What are people saying about Avatar 2 on Twitter? Oscar-winning filmmaking legend Guillermo del Toro tweeted, "I say it again, Avatar 2. Seeing it makes you realize how long it has been since you saw a movie. Rotten Tomatoes' Eric Davis declared, "Happy to say Avatar: The Way of Water is fantastic. The movie is viscerally captivating, bigger, better, and incredibly engaging than Avatar. This is cinematic storytelling at its very best in terms of plot, spectacle, spirituality, and aesthetics." David Ehrlich, the head critic for IndieWire, said the sequel was light years better than the first, and that it was easily one of the best theatrical experiences in ages, leaving streaming dead in a ditch. According to Bilge Eberi of Vulture, The Way of Water may be James Cameron's nicest, gentlest, and most intimate film. Even at his most emotional, all of his best hits are covered, yet it is always very real. He's never going to leave Pandora. He adores this household. I eventually did too. Additionally, The Atlantic's David Sims stated that the film absolutely owns bones. Upon seeing the film, he also claimed, and I quote, "Slapping my seat, hooting and screaming for the Na'vi to take out every single one of those dang sky people. It is difficult to locate any criticisms, and the small ones we did find tended to be compliments on either side. But it wasn't all praise for James Cameron's new title, as an Uproxx writer argued that the CGI feast may have been a little too overwhelming. The writer said, and I quote, "Trying to spare hyperbole, but I've never seen anything like this from a technical visual standpoint. It is too much. Maybe it's just too much. I occasionally found myself missing plot points when gazing at a Pandora fish." Additionally, Scott Mantz, an Emmy-nominated producer and film critic, wished it had been a little bit shorter. "The story itself is weaker than the first and feels drawn out at 3 hours and 10 minutes, but it's always nice to look at, and the last hour is amazing," Scott said, adding that the film has the most incredible VFX he had ever seen. What's the story of Avatar: The Way of the Water? The first sci-fi epic went on to become the most successful movie of all time and garnered 3 Oscars for its visual effects, cinematography, and art direction. It tells the story of Jake Sully, a paraplegic Marine who was sent to the moon Pandora in 2154 on a special assignment. But his efforts are complicated when he develops feelings for Neytiri, the otherworldly blue princess played by Zoe Saldana. In the follow-up movie, Jake settles down in the Na'vi family's jungle house with Neytiri and their 3 children more than 10 years after the events of the first movie. When an old enemy reappears, Jake will need to collaborate with Neytiri and the Na'vi army to defend their planet. Avatar: The Way of Water review, according to GameSpot. According to GameSpot, Avatar 2 by James Cameron features some breathtaking images, but it falls short of living up to its reputation as a cutting-edge spectacle. You know that horrifying split second when you sit down in front of the TV at the home of an elderly relative and discover that motion smoothing is still enabled? Even if you've never heard the term before, there's a good chance you're familiar with how it looks. All of the actors in your favorite show start to appear slightly uncanny, but not quite enough to be completely inhuman. Instead, it's distracting. What if you were trapped in that uncanny motion smoothing nightmare zone for more than 3 hours and were unable to exit it? That is the question that Avatar: The Way of Water dares to pose. What if all of those overly smooth, nearly but not quite unreal appearing actors were rendered in 3D and several feet tall? The visuals. To be honest, not all of Avatar 2 appears to have extra frames cached for the motion smoothing effect. The uncanniness is limited to the human cast members, who by no means make up the majority of the film. However, when they do appear, and they do for a significant portion of the overly drawn-out first act, It's difficult not to be amused by how bizarre everything seems. And this is a rough place to begin for a movie franchise that owes the entirety of its reputation to the fact that it constantly uses cutting-edge technology. And unhappily, things continue to be difficult. The weirdly uneven visual effects start to become more and more noticeable. Even when the uncanniness of the human performers fades, it never totally goes away, but it does become less evident the fewer live-action scenes there are. There is no doubt that this movie has many breathtakingly beautiful scenes. The majority of the undersea and water effects are beautifully produced, and the animation used to capture the Na'vi figures' minute facial emotions that give them a lifelike appearance is quite amazing. These moments are just sandwiched between other, much longer and more intrusive ones that feel and look like they were ripped from a PS5 game's cutscene. Sure, PS5 cutscenes look fantastic, but they can't really survive the scrutiny that comes with being both in IMAX and in 3D. The length. In total, Way of the Water probably has an hour or so that looks and feels noteworthy, which wouldn't be a bad ratio if the film weren't a whopping 3 hours and 10 minutes long. How many people can be patient enough to sit through such a lengthy film? The plot. To make matters worse, the majority of that hour's absolutely magnificent graphics can be attributed to a number of protracted montages that barely advance the plot or subject. The film is at its best when it pretends to be the most beautiful screensaver you've ever seen, but it fails miserably the moment it tries to make any of its meticulously created blue aliens tell a narrative that even somewhat resembles a compelling one. The majority of the plot in Avatar 2 is both metaphorically and practically repeated from Avatar 1. Humans are returning to Pandora, along with a cliche-spouting battalion of evil Marine cronies. The evil Marine antagonist Stephen Lang from the first film is also returning. They came back due to a mishmash of clumsy story tricks. At one point, it's because humans want to repopulate Pandora as the Earth is dying, and at another, it's because there's been the discovery of a new natural resource with the flavor of unobtainium that humans want to harvest. The characters. The plot makes a valiant effort to make us care about Jake Sully and his family, including his Na'vi wife Neytiri, and his 5 half-Na'vi, half-Avatar children, one of whom is played by Sigourney Weaver in what is arguably the most awkward casting ever. The issue is that Saldana and Jake Sully's chemistry as the main romance is about as endearing as a carton of spoiled milk, and Jake Sully is about as pleasant and interesting as a piece of driftwood. Saldana is mostly reduced to playing the role of the savage mother, as she is stereotyped due to her inability to comprehend the Sky People in the same way that Jake can. She also has very little dialogue other than wailing, growling, and hissing, and she strongly disagrees with almost all of Jake's decisions. The youngsters, on the other hand, are all depicted as being immensely, and quite frankly, obnoxiously human. Other than calling each other bro and acting generally like a group of raucous high schoolers you'd want to avoid at the mall, the only Na'vi attribute they have at all is their propensity to bare their teeth when they're surrounded. This really succeeds in underscoring the fact that Avatar 2 stubbornly refuses to engage with its dated and frankly bizarre central conceit, according to which the oppressive human population swoops in as a chosen hero to save the oppressed indigenous population, while somehow being superior to them at all of their own customs and traditions. Jake doesn't really have a character development to speak of. He pushes the Na'vi around like he owns the area, treats his kids like drill sergeants, and makes decisions on his own that Neytiri despises but later realizes were the right ones. More on the kids. Like the rest of the movie's characters, the children are all rather interchangeable and uninteresting. One could hardly tell you any of their names confidently, despite spending over 3 hours watching the film. They seem to exist almost exclusively to become captives or to get into various dangerous situations that force Jack to act. Weaver's teenager character gets hints at her own subplot a few times, but it never materializes, and the film leaves all of our unanswered and unsatisfactory questions about her. Way of the Water really gives the impression that James Cameron is more interested in making a National Geographic documentary than a big-budget motion picture with Pandora. Moments of exposition regarding topics like the workings of a whaling operation on Pandora are treated with far more care and attention to detail than any crucial character moments in the plot. Even the differences between the forest Na'vi and the reef Na'vi are painstakingly crafted and convincing. The creatures and technology designs demonstrate thoughtful consideration and care. It's just a shame that they don't have a compelling backstory to tell, or any compelling reason to care about them beyond their outward beauty. So guys, have you seen Avatar: The Way of the Water? Is it worth all the hype or not? Why don't you hit the comments section and tell us what you think? And if you enjoyed watching this video, kindly like and share it so your friends can watch it too. Last but not least, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tap the notification bell to keep getting more interesting content like this. Thanks for watching.